Hello and welcome back to another episode of Track Talk. Today we are rejoined by Conan. Hi, Conan.
Hi, you can call me David.
David, awesome. And yep, you can call me James. I believe we went through this spiel in our last interview as well, so forgive me for misremembering.
No
But
worries.
but yeah. So last week we talked to Rabbit about their involvement in the Selee project. Today we are with Conundrummer for his share of the really insane background visuals, and
hmm
Conan has graciously prepared for us, if I can speak, a presentation. So yeah, let's get into it. Conan, how does
Okay.
this work?
Okay, so Leonardo Selee is a music video, and I collaborated on it with um, Rabbit Squirrel, aka Ben, who drew most of the track, and my friend Sharon Pack, who did creative direction. But I will focus on my part in the track, where I developed a technique called overlapping frame animation. Now, first off, my inspiration for this, I've ever since I saw Bug Thief,
Mm,
I saw this part.
yep, that is one of the best parts of Bug Thief. The
That
insane
part,
meshes.
yes, those meshes, like I saw them, and I've seen people do this kind of animation in Line Rider on a smaller scale, and it was interesting. But to see it take up the entire screen to make it appear as if the lines are forming a static background that is shifting and undulating through waves. Like it is, in one perspective, yes, it looks like a sad background, but another perspective, it is the writer going through all these lines just perfectly. And I thought there is more we could do with this if we formalize it. So
Mm.
I decided to try simulating it in a graphing calculator, what it would look like. So I came up with stuff like this.
Oh
Um,
wow.
like this is what it would appear like in a game. And then stuff like this,
So
rotating,
So
and
all
then
these formulas and sliders you have here are all variables that predict how these lines will shape themselves. Is that correct?
yeah. Okay, so first one is shifting, as in like phase shifts, and second one is skew, as in the line is being skewed. Third one, this one is when the rider changes velocity. So faster is more sparse, slower is more dense, and this is rotate skew or shift and skew. It's a lot more advanced. I didn't actually include this, but anyway, whoop. Um, hold on, let me just. Okay. And then I also did this with X's instead of just one vertical line, like diagonals, to see what it would look like. And you get more of the
Oh
effect of
wow.
like the background shifting in and
Oh,
out.
it's like giving me
And it
vertigo.
Yeah, like I didn't. The nature of like these trippy visuals is that it messes with your frame of reference.
Oh
We have
yeah.
like normally in real life we have static backgrounds, but when everything's moving, it makes us feel like everything is moving.
Yeah, I feel
Um,
seasick just looking at that. That's
yeah.
crazy.
Anyway, so I kept that in mind that I need to like not go too crazy with it. So those were simulations, and next I try to like write it all down. I initially called it space-time animation because it existed over space, which is also time, but it was a little confusing. But then so I decided to call it overlapping frame animation instead. Anyway, yeah, I will share this document at some point, but more interesting thing is, as Rabbit, aka Ben, has shown, um, I came up with some patterns that can fit into this grid that forms through. Um, yeah, I came up with repeating patterns that could fit instead of using just lines and diagonals. Came up with some patterns, and then through the discussion, we decided upon the triangles, hexagons, and rhombuses. And next, decided to try out overlapping frame animation intentionally, like consciously, in a little small experiment. So here we have the rider, and then by sustaining the velocity, I can manipulate what animation. So this was one experiment, and this is what the middle section in Selee is based off of the
Yeah,
pulsating triangles. By maintaining a velocity, I mean, in this case, I maintained a constant velocity because it was just a lot easier to work like that for a very quick experiment.
sure.
But it doesn't have to be a constant velocity. The most important thing is the phase shifts, and or at least in this case. But if we just keep everything constant, that works too. Yeah, I came up with a lot more ideas, but I only picked a few of them for Selee just to keep it focused.
Fair
All
enough.
right, next, now that had this experiment done, I started doing some sketches, started designing like how I'm gonna actually accomplish all of this using automation and how to figure out auto math. So did some sketches.
Oh wow.
I came up with a convoluted live coding framework involving the client, LineWriter, a user script mod, using Tamper Monkey. It has a server, it has a live reload script over here, and then initially thought, okay, if I could parameterize everything, make a GUI for it, but then I realized it would be better to just live code everything. And then I came up with this. This is the path of the rider, and we got the tangent, and we got the normal, and some sketches of the hexagons, math, geometry, distortions, math, like how do I connect the dots to form tessellations, patterns of like the shifting
Oh
in the
yeah.
first section, the curves to make, instead of just linearly shifting, it has a little curve to make it more lifelike.
Mm.
And then, okay, now for the live code demo, we have these lines are generated, but if I change the code and then save, it updates auto. Wait a minute, sorry. Let me just update this. Okay. Live demos are dangerous. What the heck? Okay. Live demo. Okay. So I could just change it, save, and it reloads very quickly, automatically. And then that allowed me to iterate upon the design and all that stuff to just see what it would look like immediately.
Huh.
So that's how I paint with numbers in a way.
That's very
Like,
nice.
yeah. And then like I could also change the number of these or whatever. And then to demonstrate the space-time stuff I was talking about earlier, or formalized overlapping frame animation. Let's. Okay. All right. Here is the basic grid, and it's not doing anything fancy. It's just following the rider. But
Yeah.
even by itself, just by following the rider, we have these patterns emerging, or I mean, these transformations emerging based upon the direction and velocity. And that is what makes this kind of animation very unique to LineWriter.
Oh
That
yeah.
is hard. That would be hard to generate otherwise, or you have to be very intentional about it. Like,
Yeah, you'd have to be like obsessive to the point where it's just not really worth doing.
yes. So it was easier to generate this in LineWriter than in post production.
Yeah, totally.
And so this dependency on velocity, as in speed and direction, is what made me tell Rabbit, hey, keep the rider changing directions, and in the following section, keep the velocity changing, like accelerate without gravity, slow down with some lines, and that is how that factored in. And next, how the patterns and tessellations were generated in the first place. All right, another presentation. We have now step one. we generate a lattice of points. It could be rectangular like this, or it could be like in a triangular mesh or hexagonal, whatever. And then that's the first step. Have a bunch of points, lay them out in a 2D space. Step 2, warp them, or optionally warp them, like maybe with a vector field. That is how the world A of the hexagons, the pulsating was accomplished. And then in the world B with the triangles, the vibrations of the triangles were accomplished with just warping these points, so they're shifted in position relative. And then step 3, translate. So you could shift the patterns in time and add a little offset. Just more of a utility thing to just position them where they should be. Step 4, map it to the path of the rider, where we take the x and y axis and map it to u and v, where u is the tangent and v is the normal. And because it's dependent on the frame, it curves according to the path. And then we have the points aligned to the path. Step 5, tessellation. Connect the dots. There's some math behind that. I'm not going to get into that now, but that is how the tessellations are generated. And finally, execution. Actually putting all of this into the track. I wasn't able to. I don't know what happened. I can't load Selee right now, but I took the same code and put it onto a plain track just to demonstrate this. Yes, this is world A, hexagons, and the noble thing is how we have warping in action, like, or in the context of the theory I developed, phase shifting. And you can also see I added subtle vibrations to give it a little more life, or
Yeah, it has that kind of
stringiness.
dynamic bounce, which
Yeah.
is very nice.
Yes. And then add a little sequencing to add some variations in the directions of these phase shifts. And then okay, the exiting world A, we have the hexagons slowly expanding, and that is a phase shift or frequency shift. Same thing, different jumping math is like that. But I figured out a lot more math to align the frequency shift to match up with these triangles, and then now we are entering world B, triangles. It's really compressed right now. It's not designed for this speed, but all I did was add randomize the points, more
Right,
warping. Yeah. And this mess over here, it's supposed to be aligned to the bottom of the sled to make it appear as if the rider is riding on the tessellation, but it's not showing up here. And then world C, rhombuses.
yes.
Initially, I created a dedicated lattice for just rhombuses, but then I realized, oh yeah, bees and bombs we can do clever things with shapes. Rhombuses are just hexagons on top of each other. So I took 2 world A's and overlapped them.
That's
Yes.
nice.
And then got this really fun effect of the 2 lattices switching places.
Yeah, that was a really nice one.
And now for my reflection on this. One of the so first I want to remark on how an animation appeared to be made in post-production. Like, I showed all my friends, and they all initially thought that it was all edited in, but it turns out that creating it in Line Rider is okay. Yeah, I'm done with the slides. It turns out that generating all of this in Line Rider is more efficient and more effective, as in I get to see the results. And a lot of other nice things I'll bring up. And as I said, uh, because the animation is based off the rider's movements, every change in speed and acceleration and direction is made visible, and manually creating this outside of Liner will be incredibly tedious. So that's one really good thing of doing all this in Liner. And a second good thing, because the generated lines are lines, you can edit them, and that's how Rabbit was able to edit them to have shapes sit in front of it. So that's another benefit of going through this whole process.
Mm.
And that's why it would have been a lot more difficult with post-production. Like, imagine having to have some video and putting it behind shapes in LineWriter when you don't have filled-in shapes, any constant filled-in shapes in the first place.
Oh, yeah.
And even besides filled-in shapes, like, let's say we have some generated whatever, some generated pattern. There is value in being able to like go in there and manually modify it to have some little tweaks and polish, or to make it fit into the track or whatever a little more.
Yep.
So that is why I decided that this was
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's why I recognize the value in using generative art inside of LineWriter.
Yeah, and that version you had, which allowed for overlay of shapes that are white filled, that is the next step, I believe, in scene tracks, because that's going to make anyone that wants to make, like alterations or edits to their scenery so much less time consuming.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, I don't believe those versions are publicly available. I mean, I guess.
Oh, it is. All of this works on Liner.com. And the mods are all up on the user script repository. I just haven't documented any of it because documentation takes work. But all of it works, and all of it is. I mean, the mods are open source too. Like, you can see how I use like ray casting or whatever to accomplish removing, like, simulating fills without any concept of closed polygons. But anyway, now for reflection part 2, I want to remark on how this type of collaboration between an artist and developer is unprecedented in the world of animation and computer art, in that, number one, the animator or the artist is using a very specially designed tool. I mean, yes, it's LineWriter. That is already very odd, but yes. But also having a developer available on call to create and refine the tools during the project itself. Like, usually we have artists struggling with, like, say, Photoshop or Illustrator or After Effects, and people hacking scripts. But to have a specially designed tool and then to be able to collaborate on that level, that tight feedback loop, that is of note. And number 2, in the world of like computer art, we have generative art. That's usually where it ends. You generate the art, you sequence it, you maybe do a little post-production, but the art exists as it is in its raw generated state. But in this case, we have actually edited the generated art, like with the foreground scenery, and then deleting lines. And I suggested that we could also have tweaked the lines to add custom vibrations in wherever we wanted, because manually or coding very specific points to vibrate, for example, would be really tedious. It would be a lot easier to just do it by hand and be like, oh wait, over here I want this to be like this, over there I would like this to be like that. Having that kind of custom editing of generative art, that is also not done very often, if at all. And I think that this whole project really shows the possibilities of tighter collaborations between artists and programmers. It shows the possibility that when both parties have a more of a common understanding of how to create a compelling piece of art, or the processes and systems that go into generating patterns and manipulating them mathematically. Having that more domain crossover would allow for these kinds of really novel pieces of art.
Yeah, I mean, I think the synergy you have as a group is awesome. I mean, the three of you are producing some awesome collaborational track pieces, and I think in future you'll go on to produce more very interesting concepts, which actually leads into my next question. Unless you have anything else you'd like to finish off there.
I should have started off with the context that, yes, I am the programmer of line writer, and I know a lot about graphics programming, but in my day job, I recently started a computational design studio, and my other side job, I don't know, my other, um, I'm also working on generative visuals for live electronic music. And so all of this has been like tied together for me. Like Limewriter has ended up being, in at least with this project, Limewriter has ended up being just yet another medium of applying all these concepts of geometry, mathematical transformations, computer graphics, another medium to apply all of that to create some compelling piece of art. So um, I see this more as a media art project rather than a line writer track. And
Mm,
these concepts I would apply. I just see line writer as an endpoint to apply these concepts to.
awesome, yeah. So leading in off that question would be, I know you as a track maker, you like to take concepts and refine them and kind of streamline and optimize them. And I mean, obviously, you have done in the past with OK, the 10-point cannon generator, and now we have Selee, where you've optimized generation of visuals and animation to a very efficient degree. So my question would be, what are you planning to do next with that? Do you have any plans to take that to a further height? Because I mean, you said there was a lot of untapped ideas there.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of. Um, so one after the Sealy was shared to the subreddit Discord, there were some comments that were like, "This feels like not line writer," but then they compared it to Falling to the Beat, in that Falling to Beat, the writer was writing on animation. And I thought that's a fair point. All of it sits in
More
the
connected.
background, besides
Yeah.
the one triangle section. All of it sits in the background, but it's all lines, and it can be written upon, and it is possible to have these backgrounds actually sit in a foreground and have the writer interact with these shapes,
Mm,
like maybe not as a tessellation, more as like a lot of
yeah,
shapes,
totally.
regular pattern shapes, and then having the writer bounce off of them or do tricks on them.
Yeah.
And if you're familiar, if you have an intuition of geometry, you could also figure out very interesting transformations of how to make shapes transform into other shapes, or having them combine in certain ways and having other shapes come out of them.
Mm,
And then combine that all with the writer like dancing with these shapes and the transformations, and also having an intuition of how motion and gesture conveys expression, and complementing that with the motion of the writer, you could really create something trippy, compelling, very line writer specific,
yeah.
and overall really cool to watch. And that's, yeah, I have a track idea for after this.
Oh, hell yeah. So, yeah, I mean, you've been pretty thorough, and yeah, thanks for going through the time and effort to create that presentation for us.
Mhm.
So, the next question I have is based on a rumor that's been going around the community for a while. Are you Rideliner?
No.
All right, there you go, people. Stop asking me this. Now Conan has spoken. He is not Rideliner. Rideliner. What's the Rideliner myth busted? Okay. So, getting back to Selee, was there anything that you disliked about the way the animation was put into the track? Are there any sections you thought maybe you could have done differently that you would have preferred, or are you pretty happy with it?
I'm happy with it. Like I would have liked more opportunities to show off, experiment with, demonstrate the other animation techniques that I have developed, but in the concept of the track, I needed to keep it simple.
Oh, wait, did we lose you? Oh, wait, no. Nope, we're good.
Yeah, yeah, that's all.
Sweet. Yeah, so I mean, unless you have anything else you'd like to add, I think we'll probably wrap the track talk up there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sweet. Okay, yeah, well, thanks for joining us, Conan, especially for that presentation once again. I mean, you are the only guest, I believe, who has prepared as thoroughly as you have, so
Yeah,
props.
and yeah, this presentation is not just for you guys.
Sweet. So, yeah, that will conclude this track talk. Thanks for watching, guys. Leave some love and hatred below, and we'll see you next time.